Welcome to the Girl Dad Show.
Welcome to the Girl Dad Show, a professional parenting podcast. Each month, I interview entrepreneurs, leaders, and professionals who are balancing parenthood, life, and profession in the hopes to learn what it takes to be an amazing professional parent. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Girl Dad Show. Today, I'm going to talk to you a bit more about something that I've been trying very, very recently. And it's journaling. I've been practicing journaling over the last 2.5 weeks now. And it really stems from a trip that I took like last month. We had attended a wedding in Jackson Hole for a really close friend. And during that time, heading over there for the wedding, we had decided that we were going to visit Amy's really close friend who lived in Montana and just turn it into kind of a week-long trip. And so we headed over to Montana, and then we spent the week there with Amy's friend. And at the end of the trip, we drove over to Jackson Hole, Wyoming to basically attend the wedding. And then we just made it a family trip. I did plan on working through the trip because it was very hard to not work, especially during this time and trying to find, new sources of income. And as you may have recalled from previous episodes, I lost a bunch of clients. And so it's been really rough on the financial side. And although my pool service business is growing really well, it's still a very big capital investment that I've been making. Even now, I'm still making some investments before it becomes profitable and we turn it into a profitable business. I've been kind of putting it in growth mode. And I know we didn't talk about this, but I've also spent quite a bit on my Airbnb rental, my lake house rental. And so I'm a little bit underwater here over the last couple of months and really digging myself out. But needless to say, I had to work. And so I had planned on working at least 50% of the week. And so I mapped it all out and I organized it so I would be working half the week. So basically 2.5 days I'd be working while the kids and my wife hung out with her friend and their kids. And then I join in half the time. The thing that happened though was we had no service most of the time there, whether it was through Wi-Fi connections or just being in the country, and there was just no cell service. It was a really fascinating experience for me, being super connected to the internet at all times and being able to work all the time. And I've always thought of it as a good thing, just because I like to live my life and I like to work when I work, and it just kind of weaves all together, right? Work, personal, everything just kind of weaves together. And I don't really subscribe to the notion of like separating the things. I feel like, work is part of life and life is part of family and family is part of friends. And I just kind of like live life with what is happening in the moment. And I always thought that was like just something that I believed in and something that I really enjoyed and helped me until I actually lost connection. And the first hour or two was really enlightening for me to see how high my anxiety got. And then I realized, there's no real reason to have anxiety over this because I couldn't even tell the person that I was going to run late, or I couldn't attend a meeting, or I couldn't respond because there was literally no service. And so, I started to rewire my brain to just enjoy the moment and enjoy the scenery and enjoy my family and enjoy the time. And it was really beautiful too, which also helped, right? I mean, we went to Montana, Big Sky, Montana, and it's gorgeous there. And then we drove through Yellowstone and then the Grand Tetons to get to Jackson Hole, where I got this awesome tank, Jackson Hole tank. Yeah. And even Jackson Hole was beautiful itself as well. Like just the whole area was just so gorgeous. And that really helped to kind of like level set your mind. And it kind of reminds me about like why it's so important to travel and incorporate travel in your life. So and I'm not sure if this is the same for you, but for me, I feel like every time I go to a new place, it like rewires or reconnects my brain in different ways and helps me think about the world in different ways. But one of the big things that I took away from this trip was that I am pretty high strung and I have high levels of anxiety at all times. I think I've just kind of normalized it because I'm doing so much stuff. And it's really been hard to get back into that ramp up now that I've like slowed down a little bit. And what I want to do now is like not necessarily ping to the opposite side, but find a gradient level lower or towards the side of more balance. And I was talking to a really close friend, Eric, that kind of embarked me on this journey of building passive income. And I mentioned him in earlier episodes, but was talking to Eric last week about his business ventures. He's now working on building out a really big bakery business, and it's pretty interesting business as well. And we're both just kind of talking about the trials and tribulations that we're going through right now and the capital investments that we've had to put in to generate its growth. And then, when do you make it, when do you make it profitable, and what's the risk reward of not growing it further, or whatever that may be. And ultimately we kind of came to the conclusion that business is business, and there's always a way to dissect that, but you have to like complement that and do the calculus around like, how does that equate with your personal life, your physical health, your mental health, and all those things. And so it was a really great conversation. And I've come to the conclusion that I definitely want to slow things down. And obviously it'll be a process this year, but I will start talking to you a little bit about what the next stages looks like. But I don't think I'm going to be building all these different businesses and investments as fast and as aggressively as I have over the last 2 years. I would say that the last year or two has been maniacal, right? I've been either investing, building, or buying real estate or businesses, at least 3 or 4 last year, and then about 4 this year. And then I've also done a bunch of angel investing, and it makes sense mechanically and mathematically, right? Like if I want to achieve a certain level of income semi-passively within 5 years, you have to make a lot of investments and deploy a lot of capital. And in order to make that capital, you need to work a lot to generate a lot of revenue. And so I get the thesis and I get the math behind it, but I'm starting to realize that it may not be the right solution, and it may not be what I actually want. And I think that I can temper that with like maybe doing it in 8 or 9 years or 10 years versus this 5-year goal that I have. Because mathematically, what it forces me to do is just work at a nonsensical amount of time and energy and multitude of complexities. And it's not healthy for me. And it's definitely not healthy for my time with my family. And I don't want to stop per se, because I do like the idea of building this and growing this and doing it, but moving a notch over, right? And kind of moving towards a semblance of sanity and having some time. And so the thing that I came up with was to journal. And I've heard a lot about this, and I've read a lot about this. And I've also heard that a lot of really, really smart people and successful people journal. And the other thing too is that, they find the time to think and journal and process information, which allows them to maximize more of their time. So I've been feeding, all of these different businesses and all these different investments through allocation of time and being very disciplined around the rigor of like, hey, this gets 4 hours a week, this gets 2 hours a week, and time boxing everything. But what I'm realizing too is that in order to speed that time up, I need to actually spend more time thinking about how I'm going to spend that time. And it sounds really weird, but I've done a lot of reading around this concept of like measure. It's the adage of measure twice, cut once, right? But like, if you can really think about like what it is that you're doing, and you can actually spend that time doing it and really figure out what's going to be the 1 or 2 things that are the most impactful, you can spend that time much more effectively, right? So you can do the 1 or 2 things that are going to move the needle 80% versus like 5 or 6 things that might have gotten you to 80%, right? And so spending more time to think. And so that's really where the idea of journaling is coming from. And it's really to help me also build in things that I want to incorporate more into my life. And so I'm also doing a daily tracker to see if I can incorporate more dinners with my family. So protecting that time, making sure I eat and, disconnect and just hang out with my family, which I'm usually really good at, but I've gotten a little bit off that bandwagon. I also want to exercise more. So I put a daily tracker for that. I also want to read more. I bought just a ton of books for this year to read. And honestly, I've been failing at it. It's already end of August here, and it might be September by the time you listen to this, but it actually only makes it worse because I basically am like backlogged by books I want to read. And so I definitely want to start reading more every day. And then I also want to start playing music every day. And so I used to just try to play music once a week, and then I would even miss that sometimes. But I actually think that it's something that really makes me happy and makes me feel good and really like helps me like disconnect really, really fast. And so I want to start playing music every day. And so these are some of the things that I'm incorporating in my journal. And then really just focusing on big things that I'm wanting to achieve that day. and then doing the gratitude exercises of what I'm grateful for to make sure that I have a positive mindset. And then also just like revisiting the goals and strategies, because then it's like easier to remember why I'm doing what I'm doing and why it's so stressful, because there's a bigger goal that I'm trying to achieve, and then hoping that that will help me get perspective and also temper how I'm spending and allocating my time. That's kind of the big thing right now, is like figuring out how to break down the goals that I have and move them a little bit lower on the professional and financial side, or at least slow them down and increase some more space for mental and personal physical health. And also just being better about time with my family and what that means. And so there's a lot of things that are going into this, and I'm still kind of figuring out how I'm doing it and what I'm doing. But I would love to hear about what you're doing to solve for these problems and how you balance out your life and still achieve large goals. If you have any tips or best practices for me, I'd love to hear it. And then if you have any journaling tips or strategies, I'd love to hear it as well. I am actively learning how to do it. I've never really been a good journaler. I've never really done it before. And so I've spent a couple of minutes like researching different journals and tactics and strategies, but it seems like it's all around like taking the time to like data dump, be grateful for what you have, because it's all about perspective in that sense. And then really like fine tuning your goals. And that's the kind of the big nuggets that I've gotten out of my minimal amount of research, but would love to hear what you're doing and how it's helping you. I will say on a personal note, I've been doing it for 2.5 weeks now, and it's not perfect yet. I'm still getting in a good rhythm of journaling every day, but I will say it's really, really helpful. And it's very reticent to do these girl dad talks. I like love these girl dad talks. And it's really fun for me to talk about whatever comes up in my mind in that week, in that moment. Like today, I have no, like any of my girl dad talks, I have no plans. I just turn on the record button and start recording, but it's super therapeutic. I don't think I spend enough time actually processing what I'm building, because I'm building so fast and so much. And I think it's really, really great to just stop and take the moment to just like digest the information, and journaling is another extension of that, for me at least. And I hope that it helps you on your journey, and it's something that you may consider doing, because I realize that it is very, very helpful to center yourself, take that moment to center yourself and figure out why you're doing things, and then adjust your plans or priorities or whatever that may be to fit a more wholesome you, right? And I think that's really what I wanted to talk about today and kind of where I'm at. And I hope you enjoy this podcast episode and this nugget of where I'm at in my life and what I'm working on, and it helps you along in your journey. And as always, please feel free to comment or text me or message me and tell me if you want to hear about anything else, you want me to unpack anything more. Also, just share any tips and practices you have. I'm on this journey, but I started this podcast to be on this journey with other people, because I can't imagine that I'm the only one that wants to be a successful dad and a successful professional. And so I would love to hear from you as well and get your advice. Thank you, and I hope you enjoy the show. Thank you for listening to The Girl Dad Show. Did you know that our website is full of really fun products, like the shirt I'm wearing? Visit thegirldadshow.com to shop our t-shirts, hats, mugs, and more. And follow our social channels to hear about our latest sales.